Hello again. Welcome back. I'm going to start with an apology because when we moved on to the extra pages, I thought that it was in a way a continuation of the story, even though at the end, when it said they were all going off to the great harvest, it certainly did look like a finish. But now I realize what's happening is these are just extra parts to be placed in the context of other parts of the poem to fill them out, so to speak. So, with that in mind, moving into today's reading, it's quite dense. So I've done my best to unpack the ideas as best as I can. So here goes. Orc, the revolutionary spirit, has as his emanation the shadowy female. She's a very vague character, and she seems to have a twofold nature. In one sense, she personifies everything awful in a society that's on the brink of revolution. On the other hand, she personifies the idea that when the revolution occurs, it's difficult to know what you've really got. Her relationship to Orc, therefore, is quite ambivalent. Satan, we're told, refuses to accept form from the get go. Form could be viewed as a blueprint for existence. If he has a form, that means that his behavior is somewhat already determined, and he doesn't want that. He will make his own rules, and so he operates in deepest Ulro. He thinks he has no part in the great harvest, but he can't see how he fits into the bigger picture. He will run the mills for eternity. That will be his function in the great harvest, whether he sees it that way or not. The female space. This is the creation of the female mind that creates a very limited space out of the fullness of eternity. Somewhat, I think, like the creation of our world in the Kabbalah, where the true God Ein Sof contracts himself and creates a space for a lower world with its own inferior god named Zimzum. The female space reduces the perceptive abilities possible in eternity to the five limited senses through which only a fraction of eternity can be perceived. This appears infinite to itself, although it's really less than a speck compared with eternity. Satan pervades this space, which is now referred to as Canaan. So, with that in mind, we'll turn to the reading. First Orc was born, then the Shadowy Female, then all Los's family. At last Enetharmon brought forth Satan, refusing form. In vain the Miller of Eternity made subservient to the great harvest, that he may go to his own place, Prince of the Starry Wheels. Then Los and Enetharmon knew that Satan is Urizen, drawn down by Orc and the Shadowy Female into generation. Oft Enetharmon entered weeping into the space, there appearing an aged woman raving along the streets. The space is named Canaan. Then she returned to Los, weary, frightened as from dreams. The nature of a female space is this: it shrinks the organs of life till they become finite and itself seems infinite. And Satan vibrated in the immensity of the space, limited to those without, but infinite to those within. It fell down and became Canaan, closing Los from eternity in Albion's cliffs, a mighty fiend against the divine humanity mustering to war. Satan, me, is gone to his own place, said Los. Their gods I will not worship in their churches, nor king in their theatres. Elenatria, whence is this jealousy running along the mountains? British women were not jealous when Greek and Roman were jealous. Everything in eternity shines by its own internal light, but thou darkenest every internal light with the arrows of thy quiver, bound up in the horns of jealousy to a deadly fading moon. And a calathron binds the sun into a jealous globe, that everything is fixed, opaque without internal light. Solos lamented over Satan, who triumphant divided the nations, and Tharmas, demon of the waters, and Orc, who was Lova. The shadowy female, seeing Milton, howled in her lamentation over the deeps, outstretching her 27 heavens over Albion, and thus the shadowy female howls in articulate howlings. I will lament over Milton in the lamentation of the afflicted. My garments shall be woven of sighs and heartbroken lamentations. The misery of unhappy families shall be drawn out into its border, wrought with the needle with dire sufferings, poverty, pain, and woe. Along the rocky island, and thence throughout the whole earth, there shall be the sick father and his starving family. There the prisoner in the stone dungeon, and the slave at the mill. I will have writings written all over it in human words, that every infant that is born upon the earth shall read and get by rote as a hard task of a life of 60 years. I will have kings inwoven upon it, and counsellors and mighty men. The famine shall clasp it together with buckles and clasps, and the pestilence shall be its fringe, and the war its girdle, to divide into Rahab and Tirzah, that Milton may come to our tents. For I will put on the human form, and take the image of God, even pity and humanity, but my clothing shall be cruelty. And I will put on holiness as a breastplate and as a helmet, and all my ornaments shall be of gold of broken hearts. And the precious stones of anxiety and care and desperation and death, and repentance for sin and sorrow and punishment and fear, to defend me from thy terrors, O Orc, my only beloved. Elenatria is Palamabron's emanation. Blake is the manifestation of Palamabron in Ulro, so Elenatria is Blake's wife Catherine. What has Catherine got to be jealous about? Is she worried she will lose her husband to Haley? Blake criticizes her for her selfishness, selfhood being a fault that's a central theme to this whole poem. But her arrows frighten Haley away. Ocalathron is the emanation of Los's angry son Rinthra. She turns the whole earth into an orb of jealousy. Tharmas, a uniting figure in eternity, personifies chaos in Ulro, being the demon of the sea of time and space. Orc, the manifestation of Luva, will add his spirit to the chaos already in the world. The shadowy female declares a life of misery for the human race. She plans to bring war, famine, and pestilence, but have on at the same time the appearance of beauty. When she sees Milton arrive, she decides in her frustration to up the ante. Her last words in this reading bring out her ambivalence to Orc, who, as the spirit of revolution, both attracts and terrifies her. So that's the end of this reading. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you again. Bye bye.